Colleges are bracing either way as protests tied to the Israel-Hamas war are set to return. When police cleared a pro-Palestinian encampment at George Washington University right here in D.C. Just earlier this year, officers doused some protesters thoroughly with pepper spray, and these protesters said that it burned not for just a few hours, but for days. And we know as the fall term gets underway at many colleges, administrators are preparing for another possible surge in campus activism. The last school year ended acrimoniously as anti war protesters persisted on many school grounds, disrupting graduation ceremonies and jeopardizing some students' academic standing. Though on campus demonstrations lulled this summer, as students disperse, but the conditions that motivated the recent wave of activism haven't changed dramatically since the spring. And while several high profile college presidents have left their roles, many schools have substantively changed their investing strategies, a demand made by the lion's share of protesters, but a complicated ask in practice. You see, international negotiations over a potential ceasefire in Gaza are tenuous, and members of Congress continue to see political opportunity in inserting themselves into the debate over how campuses should go about quelling the unrest. And so we shall see as we head into the final stretch of this election whether or not these campus protests return even bigger than they were in the spring. But moving along, speaking of bigger, more than 200 Bush, McCain, and Romney alums endorsed Harris for president and criticized Trump. That's right, more than 200 Republicans who previously worked for either former President George W. Bush, the late Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, and or Senator Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah, they endorsed VP Harris for president in an open letter today, obtained exclusively by USA Today. The letter from alums of the three Republican presidential nominees prior to former President Trump comes on the heels of a Democratic National Convention last week in Chicago that showcased Republican detractors of the GOP nominee. Now, at least five, count them, five former aides to former President George H.W. Bush also signed the letter, which has 238 signatures. A similar group of about 150 anti-Trump former staffers of Bush, McCain, and Romney pledged their support for President Biden in 2020's election. And among those who signed the letter in support of Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, include former McCain Chiefs of Staff Mark Salter and Chris Koch, John Donahue, former legislative director for McCain, and then Jennifer Lux, the press secretary for McCain's 2008 campaign, and Gene Becker, longtime chief of staff to George H.W. Bush. And so clearly you have some Republican standard bearers breaking ranks and throwing their support behind VP Harris. So guess what, Nikki Haley? You're not alone. Oh, I'm sorry. Not Nikki Haley. I mean Nikki Haley supporters. Nikki Haley supporters who were orphaned when the GOP nominee dropped out of the race, many of which found a home in the Harris-Walz campaign. I meant to say they're not alone. But Vice President Harris might be standing alone on that debate stage if Trump's hedging, I guess we'll call it that. If it's hedging is any indication, NBC News is reporting that Trump suggests that he may back out of the September 10th ABC News debate. That's right. The former president suggested today that he might back out of the scheduled ABC News debate with VP Harris on September 10th because he said the network is hostile towards Republicans. Speaking inside a Vietnamese restaurant in Falls Church, Virginia, Trump said that he watched ABC's This Week on Sunday and didn't like how Senator Tom Cotton was treated. He didn't like it. In response to a question about whether he still plans to participate in the debate, Trump said, quotes, "We're thinking about it. We're thinking about it." They also want to change the rules. The deal was we keep the same rules, but all of a sudden they want to make a change in the rules because she can't answer questions. Why doesn't she do something like I'm doing right now? She can't talk. We can't have another dummy as a president, end quote. That's what Trump said today. He said he wants to have a fair debate and welcome tough questions, but ABC really should be shut out, he continued. He said that he'd much rather do it on NBC. He says, I'd much rather do it on CBS. Frankly, I think CBS is very unfair, but the best of the group. And certainly I do it on Fox, and I'd even do it on CNN. I thought CNN treated us very fairly the last time. And so we'll see what happens. We know that Michael Tyler, the communications director for the Harris campaign, said on MSNBC today that the campaign prefers live mics so the American people can see both candidates for who they are and hear everything that comes out of their mouth. He also said that Trump seems to prefer that scenario too. So we shall see what happens there. And speaking of Harris and Walz, NBC News is also reporting that that Harris and Walz are heading to Georgia as campaign seeks to build on its convention momentum. VP Harris and Governor Walz, they are hitting the campaign trail. They're launching a bus tour of Southern Georgia this week, and the duo's this will be their first time campaigning in the state together. And as of now, their first public event after the Democratic convention in Chicago. The pair will be using the momentum from the party's convention to drive them into the last couple months of the general election. In addition to the bus tour, Harris and Walz are expected to tape their first joint interview next week and attend multiple fundraisers, most likely to take place in New York, California, Florida, and Georgia, according to some sources familiar. Following the tour, Harris will headline a solo rally in Savannah, Georgia. The trip will mark Harris's 7th visit to the state this year and her 2nd since launching her presidential campaign last month. When we come forward, we'll be joined with our friend, Richard Fowler, Fox News contributor and contributing writer to Forbes. We're going to get his take on some insights that I was able to draw out from Maya Harris, the sister of Vice President Kamala Harris. I had a chance to catch up with her last week after a Collective PAC event. When we come forward, listen to what she shared with me about her big sis, and we'll get Richard Fowler's take on that and more. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
The quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580. Tavis is like George and Wheezy. He's moving on up. Last year, Tavis was number 45 on the Talkers Magazine list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America. Wait for it. Wait for it. The 2024 list was recently released, and Tavis has jumped to number 33 on the list of the nation's most important talkers, making him the highest-ranked African-American on the coveted roster. Congratulations to Tavis Smiley from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580. We've got you black.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV.
KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit lafla.org. lafla.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really delighted to be in conversation with our friend, Richard Fowler. He is a Fox News contributor and contributing writer to Forbes.com. Welcome, Richard.
Oh, hello. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing? How are you recovering from the Democratic National Convention?
Oh, I think I'm almost there. Trying to get my voice back still. It was quite a busy last week, so it's good to be back home for sure.
Well, let me tell you, I had to rest all weekend. There wasn't a TV or anything on in my house because I just needed some silence because it was so much energy. It was so much noise. But there's no experience like it.
Yeah, at least you got to rest. I was on Fox News Sunday yesterday, so I had to get back I had one day off before I had to get back to work. But I took it gracefully.
well, we appreciate you being with us as you're recovering from the DNC convention. Speaking of the convention, I had a chance to catch up with Maya Harris, the sister of Vice President Kamala Harris. Take a listen to what she shared with me about her big sis. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Really delighted to be here with Vice President Harris's little sister, Maya Harris. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
What do you make of day one of the DNC convention?
I thought that it was electric. It could not have been better. The energy, the enthusiasm, the number of people who came out and really talked about what is at stake in this moment and why Kamala is the choice, and all of the work that we all need to do collectively, because this is about all of us as a collective. I think it just couldn't have gone better.
As a former staffer to Secretary Clinton and her bid for the White House, what did you make of her speech, and what does it feel like to have a second go at this?
Her speech was just wonderful. It was wonderful. I think she said everything that needed to be said about this moment, about this being the time for us to break that highest and hardest glass ceiling. It was just the reception that she received from the DNC was tremendous, as it should be. And I think she gave us all our marching orders about what we need to do to make sure that we make this happen in November.
Last question. The vice president was tearful yesterday as Joe Biden was giving his speech. What did she tell you about the whirlwind of emotions she's been experiencing on day one and in these past 3.5 weeks?
Well, they have a true partnership, and they've had that since day one. And so to be able to honor and celebrate President Biden for the leadership he's had over the last 3.5 years and will continue to have through the end of this term, of course, is a very meaningful moment to be able to do that. And I think that all of that came to the fore in that emotion. And it's wonderful also just to see the two of them and how excited he is not only about all that they accomplished together under the first 4 years of this administration, but his enthusiasm for her now taking the reins and being elected our next president, and all that he knows that she will accomplish once we get that job done.
Our thanks to Maya Harris, the sister of Vice President Kamala Harris, our Democratic nominee.
Thank you.
And so we had a chance to hear from Maya Harris. Richard, what do you make of what the VP's little sis had to say?
Oh, I mean, I think she was absolutely right. I think what we heard from Secretary Clinton, I guess Senator Clinton as well, was just that. And I think her speech being on the first night was a great way to open the convention, because it sort of spoke to what we have come from and where we are going. And so I think for the folks who programmed this year's DNC convention, to them we owe some flowers, because they set the convention up in a way that prepared both the people in the arena as well as the at-home audience for Thursday evening. So Monday night, you hear from the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden. You hear from Hillary Clinton. On Tuesday, you hear from the Obamas, right? I think that's right, if my schedule serves me correct.
It's right.
And they give you this, Michelle Obama gives you the speech about Black Jobs, which is now a song. Because they welcome to the Black internet being
it's a song, it's a dance, it's a lot of things.
So you hear from them on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, you hear from Vice President Walz, but you also get surprise guest Oprah Winfrey, who talks about how this Harris campaign over the past 3 weeks has restored joy to our political process, a political process that, I'll be honest with you, has been sort of mired down with, oh, if I have to pay attention, I will, which is where we were this time last month, right? This time 2 months ago, this time 3 months ago. And then it all leads up to Vice President Kamala Harris's nomination acceptance speech, which was Thursday evening, which was, for folks who were in the arena, folks watching at home, a very joyous occasion. So I think the programming was perfect, and pitch perfect, given that, it had to create a contrast between where they are and where Democrats are.
I mean, one of the things that Maya Harris talked about was honoring and celebrating Joe Biden. And how, day one of the convention did that very, very, very well. My question for you is, how does the Harris-Walz campaign strategically use the sitting president, who's obviously, giving Harris and Walz the space to, grow the party and to run their own campaign? But he is the sitting president. He does have Air Force One. He is capable of going out and in campaigning. Should they be using him more? And if so, how should they be using him in this final stretch of the campaign?
I think the Harris-Walz campaign has to walk a very fine line here, because what we're seeing in the polling, and this polling is still also very new, and I've said this over and over again, and I'll say this again here, especially as we as we're speaking, members of a bipartisan commission in Congress is in Pennsylvania at the crime scene where there was an attempted assassination attempt against Donald Trump. It just happened 4 weeks ago, right? Like it wasn't that long ago. In a normal news cycle, that would have still been the story that we were talking about. But in this news cycle, folks forget that there was an assassination attempt against the former president at a campaign rally where 2 innocent individuals also died. So I think the Harris-Walz campaign has to be very careful. They have to thread a very clear line on how they use President Joe Biden. Because if you look at the polling in this moment, voters aren't attributing some of the negative things that happened under President Biden to Kamala Harris. And I say that at a moment where we are celebrating the 3-year anniversary of America's withdrawal from Afghanistan, which one, for any logical person who's paying attention to the news, would say that is a sore eye, a black eye a blemish for the Biden administration to see Afghanis hanging off of C-7 planes as they take off, right? And let's not forget the bombing at Abbey Gate, which killed 13 of our soldiers, right? And the fact that people are sort of saying they're blaming Joe Biden for that, and they're not necessarily blaming Vice President Kamala Harris for that, and that clear bright line that exists is the reason why you likely won't see too much of Joe Biden on the campaign trail, because it's allowing their campaign to create a little bit of day and night between Harris and the sitting president of the United States. Same goes for the immigration issue. So they don't really attribute to Kamala Harris. They attribute to Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, one issue that they also contribute a lot of grief to Biden on is the Israel-Gaza conflict. And during the vice president's acceptance speech, nomination acceptance speech, she said, quotes, with respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. Let me be clear that I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7th, including unspeakable sexual violence, the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, she went on to say, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives, desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. That last part of her speech really won pretty thunderous applause at the Democratic convention. Richard, tell us why.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First, let me start here. I think going into the Democratic National Convention, the media predicted total and complete chaos because of ceasefire now demonstrators. And I mean, Dr. Quartey, you were at the convention and we didn't see total and complete chaos.
Not at all.
And I think that had a lot to do with the work of Mayor Brandon Johnson coordinating with federal and local partners to secure the United Center and the McCormick Place, which is where the conventions were held, as well as, a new nominee who sort of has a different positioning on this issue than the sitting president of the United States does. And I think the key words here, and I wrote this down because these were a part of my Fox News Sunday notes, was the last part you just mentioned: dignity, security, freedom, and most importantly, self-determination. And while she didn't go as far to say two-state solution, which is sort of what that, if you were to describe a two-state solution in policy, it would be dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. So she's basically saying the quiet part out loud here. And I think it's a big deal. And I think it's a big deal simply given the fact that we haven't seen an American nominee for president be so very vocally clear about what is happening to Palestinians and what they need for this not to happen again.
More on this when we come forward. We're talking to Richard Fowler, Fox News contributor, Forbes contributing writer, BET political analyst. What doesn't he do? More with Richard when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. A Franklin County, Ohio judge is denying the request of a former Columbus police officer who asked that a lawsuit filed by the family of Donovan Lewis be dropped. Lewis is the 20-year-old man who was unarmed when he was shot to death by now retired CPD officer Ricky Anderson during the execution of an arrest warrant in August of 2022. The lawsuit claims Columbus police have systematically used excessive force and overly aggressive tactics, particularly in predominantly Black neighborhoods. Officer Anderson has been indicted on murder and reckless homicide counts in connection with Lewis's death. The trial is expected to take place next year. Today marks a somber anniversary in Jacksonville, Florida. It was 1 year ago that 3 Black people were killed in a racially motivated shooting at a Dollar General store. The shooter committed suicide. A memorial was held over the weekend where Mayor Donna Deegan spoke and said she felt a personal responsibility that this horrific act of violence happened under her watch. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Bank of America has powerful digital solutions for local and global businesses, so you can make every move matter. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2024.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Clippers coach Ty Lue is one of the primary candidates to take over the head coaching job for the U.S. Olympic men's basketball team. Golden State coach Steve Kerr is expected to step down from the position. When Kerr was named head coach for Team USA in 2021, he indicated he would not stay on after the Paris Olympics. Kerr led Team USA to the gold medal 3 weeks ago. Lue was one of Kerr's assistants. All 32 NFL teams have finished their 3-game preseason schedules, which means there will be no NFL games over the Labor Day weekend. It's a schedule issue the TV networks are not happy about. The NFL's 17-game regular season schedule begins September 5th. To ensure the league does not have another open weekend, be prepared for an 18-game schedule next year with just 2 preseason games. The 18-game proposal will be a topic at labor talks between the owners and players union in the offseason. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Getting connected has never been easier. Get free Wi-Fi at all LA County library locations, inside the library and outside in the parking lots. Visit your local library and get connected today. Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
Did you know your life insurance is an asset you can sell? I'm Jay Jackson, CEO of Abacus Life. For almost 20 years, Abacus has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors just like you. And at abacuspays.com, we've created a free policy value calculator so you can find out the worth of your policy in just seconds. There are no fees and no obligation. Get real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus. Learn more at abacuspays.com.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent. So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle.
Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle. This back-to-school season, Tide and Downy are giving back with $1.5 million in scholarships. Enter to win. No purchase necessary. US/DC 17+. End September 30th. Rules. Tide.com/scholarship/official rules.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Diego.
Hi, Diego. It's Jennifer Coolidge. I just want to say your cashback match makes me feel so special. It really inspired me.
That's great. Doubling the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year is what we do.
Well, I'm doubling everything now. Double dating, double dipping, double feature, double header, double whammy. Basically double or nothing.
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
Okay, raise your hand if you want to make your life a little bit easier. Great. Now raise your other hand if you like to be comfortable. Perfect. Now that you have both hands raised, imagine putting on your shoes. And that, folks, right there is your answer to an easier, more comfortable life. Go hands-free with Skechers Slip-ins. This is footwear you don't need your hands to put on. They can be raised in the air, and you can just step it and go. Why don't you experience what people can't stop talking about? Life-changing Skechers Slip-ins. Get your Slip-ins at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
I feel like I'm constantly cleaning hair off my bathroom floor. At least my Swiffer sweeper makes it easy. Sweeper heavy-duty dry cloths have ultra-thick pads to trap and lock hairs, like a hair magnet. And when I'm finished cleaning up my hair, Sweeper takes care of his too. Now the hair's gone, all thanks to Swiffer. Try Swiffer Sweeper heavy-duty dry cloths. I promise you'll love them or your money back. And also try Swiffer Sweeper Wet to make quick work of tough, sticky messes.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and in conversation with Richard Fowler. Richard Fowler, he is BET political analyst, Fox News contributor, and contributing writer to Forbes.com. And he's Jamaican. So it all makes sense. So, Richard, we've been talking a lot about the DNC convention, doing a look back, but I want to do a little bit of a look forward, and really troubling judgment coming out of Kentucky. NBC News reporting that a judge in Kentucky has dismissed core charges against two former Louisville police officials involved in the raid that ended in Breonna Taylor's death. Judge Charles R. Simpson III of Western Kentucky's U.S. District Court just last Thursday said that Taylor's death was triggered by the actions of her boyfriend, who opened fire when police arrived outside her Louisville apartment on March 13th, 2020. This is the part that really got me, and this has just been rattling in the back of my head all weekend. Regardless of whether former Louisville police detective Joshua James and former Sergeant Kyle Meany wrote and approved a falsified request for a warrant, it was boyfriend Kenneth Walker's gunfire at what he believed were intruders that caused a deadly police response. That's what the judge said. I think this is a dangerous ruling. The fact that these police officers approved, they wrote and approved a falsified request for a warrant, and this judge is saying that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if Breonna Taylor's boyfriend hadn't fired that gun, believing that there were intruders, that wouldn't have caused the deadly police response that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. I think this is malarkey, as President Biden would say. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. And listen, I think this is also the importance of why elections matter, right? Because this is the first of, this is not the first of many missteps that we've seen in this fight for justice for Breonna Taylor. We also saw a misstep when the Kentucky Attorney General decided that he wasn't going to prosecute here initially in this case. And so, you know, and this is one of those ones, he was elected by the people of Kentucky. So the people of Kentucky elected him, and he made the choice that prosecuting these officers wasn't part of his job, or he didn't see a reason to prosecute these officers. And so there goes part of the problem why, to bring it back full circle, in 77 days, whether you live in Kentucky or you live in the nation's capital, it's really important that you vote in this election, because beyond just the top of the ballot, there are races lower on the ballot, including judges in many states and many counties across the country, that do have real impact on the lives of everyday Americans. And I also think, too, this was a local judge, but it's also worth pointing out that federal judges appointed by presidents will also have impacts on your life. I mean, we say this in the moment where Judge Eileen Cannon, the judge who dismissed the classified documents case under that was going against Donald Trump. That's not the only case that she has on her docket, right? She has a lot of other cases with crimes that include people that look like me and you, Dr. Quartey. So if she is ruling in the favor of Trump here, and she has a little to no experience on the federal bench, even prosecuting a case or defending a case in a federal courtroom. What happens if a Black man or a Black woman or a case like this case, like in the case of Breonna Taylor, shows up in her courtroom? How will she rule? And so there's real implications here. And this is why the federal judiciary, as well as the state and local judiciary, matters so much for everyday Americans.
Yeah, they do. And this is why, court appointments, to your point, are on the ballot. The next president will have a chance to appoint maybe 2, maybe 3 Supreme Court justices. And that doesn't include judges that are part of the federal judiciary, the circuit courts, and all of that. And so that matters. And to your point earlier, you're right. Those down ballot races, those races for local prosecutors, they matter a great deal. And so, for folks who are sort of, considering sitting out this election, you may feel, some kind of way about who's at the top of the ticket, but there are so many offices that play a part in your everyday life that you may want to reconsider sitting things out. And speaking of judges, we have an acute problem. Apparently, NBC News is reporting that the federal courts are full of judges who could retire, but won't. And guess what? Little can be done about it. Maybe we should add this to the list of proposed reforms, court reforms. We know that pressure on judges to retire often becomes public only when it concerns a Supreme Court justice. Like when President Obama was in office, liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg rebuffed calls from liberals to step down. And at the time, she was in her early 80s and faced multiple bouts of cancer. We all know how that ended. But guess what? As of last year, there were 870 active federal judges, including 9 Supreme Court justices and judges serving on the 13 appeals courts and the 94 district courts, according to the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts. But of those, 70 district judges and 34 appeals court judges are eligible to take senior status, whereby these judges take on a lesser role but maintain their title, or they retire on full pay. This is according to an analysis from NBC News. Richard, should there be some reform to how and when federal judges can take on senior status? Should that be a part of the reform package that we're hearing from Democrats?
Look, I don't agree with Ted Cruz on much on anything, but Ted Cruz a couple years ago proposed a bill to put, term limits on Senate and House members. And I agreed with him on that. And I think that should extend to the judiciary as well, because for the exact reason, as I just said, right, the idea that you have judges on the district court level and the Court of Appeals level who are in their 80s, just sort of waiting it out, I think to me is really problematic. Not because people in their 80s aren't capable. That's not what I'm saying. I think America has a problem with worshiping at the fountain of youth, but I do think we have an opportunity to bring new judges in. I do think we have an opportunity to bring new voices in. I think we have an opportunity to bring folks in to understand that we're in a new world, in a new society. Like, what happens if a judge is hearing a bullying case about TikTok, and they have never heard of TikTok? So there's just we're in an era where there's a new language being talked about, and it's important that there's a keen understanding of that. And I mean, mind you, while a lot of federal judges, there's no cameras allowed in the courtroom, we've just seen a small demonstration of that when there was a hearing recently, about a year ago, on Capitol Hill, where we saw senators talk about, banner ads on WhatsApp, understanding that there are no banner ads on WhatsApp because WhatsApp's encrypted, but the senators didn't know that. So that's what's happening in the United States Senate. Just imagine what's happening in our judiciary when these cases are coming in front of them.
Wow. Well, before we let you go, Richard, in our remaining minute, tell us, what are you working on? What's the next big story that
Right now, I'm working on catching up on my sleep. But we'll see what happens. There's a couple of stories that are in my writer's notebook that I'm happy working on. And for the first time in a couple of days, my students join me. As Dr. Quartey knows, I am a professor at Georgetown, and my class begins in a couple of days. So I'm excited to see my budding new journalism students join me in class starting in 2 days. And we'll see what comes out of my notebook between the times I'm teaching them.
Awesome. Our thanks to Richard Fowler for joining us. Come back again soon. And congratulations on your new gig over at Georgetown. That's your 5th job.
You know what? I'm not doing this with you. See you later.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward. In fact, the quiet part out loud when we come forward. If you have a therapist or you've been in search of a therapist, you know that therapists are leaving health insurance networks by the droves. We'll tell you why when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Support comes from Getty, presenting Memnon, a world premiere theatrical event under the stars. Memnon tells the tale of a powerful Ethiopian king who fights alongside Troy during the city's darkest hour. This epic Greek myth has been overlooked for over a millennium. Until now. Memnon is co-produced by the Classical Theater of Harlem, Thursdays through Saturdays this September at the Getty Villa Museum. Tickets are available now at getty.edu.
Chevy Radio 30 before and after, code GWMR0254000.
With the incredibly spacious 3-row Chevy Traverse, you can change
Let's just meet at the concert.
into
Why don't I pick all you guys up on the way?
the advanced safety engineered Chevy Blazer EV lets you turn. You think we should turn back into full steam ahead? And with the affordable Equinox EV,
Keep an eye out for the next Charger, kids.
becomes
Get comfortable, kids. We'll be home in 4 hours.
for summer adventures, Chevy's got you. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Break up with stinky clothes.
Rinse it out.
Every now and then I get a little bit tired of the stinks that just will never come out.
Oh, Downy is straight.
Every now and then I rinse it out. One wash and it delivers. One wash, it smells so clean. Downy Rinse and Refresh, it's a dream.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes 100% of odor in just one wash. Guaranteed.
We're thrilled to announce that the Dear Future Wifey podcast is now available on the Urban One Podcast Network. This show, hosted by Latiris R. Whitfield, explores the journey of discovering and rediscovering love and relationships. With over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, Dear Future Wifey has become a prototype for discussions about love and relationships. Learn how to rediscover love, heal, and have faith in relationships. Go to urbanonepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Are you facing an unexpected financial emergency? You need WeFixMoney.com. WeFixMoney.com can help you get up to $3,000 fast. WeFixMoney.com is free to use, available 24/7, and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Go to the name you trust, WeFixMoney.com. If you need emergency cash up to $3,000 for bills or anything else, type WeFixMoney.com directly into your browser. That's WeFixMoney.com.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. NPR and ProPublica are reporting that finding a therapist who takes your insurance can be nearly impossible. But here's why. You see, Carter J. Carter, that's a name to remember. Carter became a therapist to help young people struggling with their mental health. And then Roseanne Marmore wanted to support survivors of trauma. And then there was Kendra F. Dunlap, who aspired to serve people of color. They studied, they honed their skills, they opened practices, joining health insurance networks that put them within reach of people who couldn't afford to pay for sessions out of pocket. So did more than 500 other psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists who shared their experiences with ProPublica. You see, although federal law requires insurers to provide the same access to mental and physical health care, these companies have been caught time and again shortchanging customers with mental illness, restricting coverage, and delaying or denying treatment. You see, these patients whose disorders can be chronic and costly are bad for business. That's at least what industry insiders have told ProPublica. There are nowhere near enough available therapists in insurance networks to serve all the people seeking care. And although almost all Americans are insured, about half of people with mental illness are unable to access treatment. The consequences can be devastating. And so to understand the forces and that drive even the most well-intentioned therapists from insurance networks, ProPublica, they plunged into a problem most often explored in statistics and one-off perspectives. A reporter spoke to hundreds of providers in nearly all 50 states, from rural communities to big cities. And the interviews underscore how the nation's insurers, how they quietly and with minimal pushback from lawmakers and regulators have assumed an outsized role in mental health care. It's often the insurers, not the therapist, that determine who can get treatment and what kind they can get and for how long. Sound familiar? More than a dozen therapists said that insurers urged them to reduce care when their patients were on the brink of harm, including suicide. And all the while, mental health providers struggled to stay in business as insurers withheld reimbursements that sometimes came months late. Some spent hours a week chasing down their meager payments, listening to hold music and sending faxes into the abyss. Several insurers told ProPublica that they are committed to ensuring that access to mental health providers, emphasizing that their plans are in compliance with state and federal laws. Insurers also said that they have practices in place to make sure that reimbursement rates reflect market value and to support and retain providers for which they continually recruit. And so this is super duper important. You see, all this talk about making our healthcare more affordable and more accessible, this is an example of when the wheels come off of that effort. And we've got to be vigilant about maintaining our healthcare and, dare I say, improving the quality of our healthcare from the neck up, being mental health care, and the neck down, your physical healthcare. And so next time you're on the campaign trail, next time you're at a campaign rally, next time you get a chance to talk to any elected official representing you or running to represent you, it's important to ask them, well, where do they stand with, with regard to this issue? What are they doing or what can they do better to make sure that insurers and regulators, are engaging in fair business practices when it comes to the therapists that treat you or the therapists that might treat you tomorrow. You never know when you're going to need mental health care. You never know what life may throw at you. And don't you want to know that when you do need it, that you're going to be able to get the best possible therapist, and that your therapist is going to be paid fairly and reimbursed in a timely manner. This is not the time for us to be driving folks away from providing critical mental health care. This is the time where we should be doing everything we can to attract people into the profession. And so that there is the quiet part out loud. And in other news, let me finish with this. I saw this article in the New York Times, and I had to share it with you. They talked to a number of older adults about what it takes to live past 110 years old. Do you want to live past 110? I mean, some of you may say, I don't know, right? Well, here were some highlights from what they shared. Sister Andre, when she died in 2023 at the age of 118, Sister Andre, a Roman Catholic nun in France, was the world's oldest known person. She said, quote, "Work kept me alive," she told reporters a year before her death. And Hester Ford, she grew up tilling fields and picking cotton in South Carolina. She was survived by her 12 children, 68 grandchildren, and 125 great-grandchildren, and at least 120 great-great-grandchildren. Maybe there's some wisdom to that, being surrounded by a lot of young people. Virginia McLaurin, you all might remember her. She was born in South Carolina during the Jim Crow era, and she drew attention for dancing with the Obamas in the White House in 2016, telling them that she was so happy to have a Black president and first lady. And then there was Mamie Kirkland. Her childhood was scarred by her experiences of lynchings and the Ku Klux Klan. She died at 111 at her home in upstate New York. She said she left Mississippi a scared little girl of 7 years old, she said in 2016. Now I'm 107 and I am not frightened anymore. And then Kane Tanaka, she worked on a military base in Japan to support her family living through 2 world wars and the influenza outbreak of 1918. When she died at 119, she was the world's oldest known person. And then Lois Levy, she was the oldest known living person in New York State when she died at 112. She credited her low cholesterol diet, her positive attitude, and a daily glass of wine. Cheers to the memory of Lois Levy. And we'll have to leave it there. Hopefully a little wisdom as we all lean into longevity and whatever that might look like for us. I also want to thank everyone who has picked up Kamala, the Motherland, and Me. Thank you for making it an Amazon bestseller and continuing to keep it on the charts as an Amazon bestseller. In the coming weeks, I'll be announcing a little bit of a tour across the country to meet up with you and be in conversation about some of the themes in this book and more. But we'll have to leave it there. My thanks to The Village, helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Miles Lowe, our show producer, Robert Battles, and podcast publishing guru, Odell Bodie. Remember, don't panic, organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have. Happy Monday, y'all. Happy National Dog Day. Happy Equality Day. I think this is Women's Equal Pay Day, something like that. Happy. We'll see you tomorrow. You've been listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 15.